So now it's time to start setting up our throttle linkages, and before we do that we need to figure out where our rod is going to run, where our servo is going to be, and some things like that. So first thing you need to know is that we include a servo tray for our kits. Now normally you can mount this in the corner, it's going to be raised up, but the way I'm going to use this, I'm going to mount this inside the firewall on the ground. So the servo is going to be on the ground, but I'm going to use this as a little reinforcement. I'll explain that in a minute, but I'm going to put that back in there for the moment. Now, a couple things, when I do these measurements, I'm going to put the throttle arm at center, and when I do that, I drew a line across, straight across, parallel to the standoffs, and what I found is I made a little mark here on the firewall, and this is 5/8 of an inch up from the firewall. So that means our arm here sticks up 5/8 of an inch up at the origin point here. Now the next thing we need to know is how tall, where the servo is going to be. Actually, before we move on to that, another measurement is that this is going to be 3.5 inches from the tip here to the wall. So there's 3.5 inches from here to the firewall. Now the next two things we need to know are, one is where our gear is going to be on the servo in relation to the firewall. And I went ahead and set up my tray right here where it's going to be easily accessible to work on. So I'm trying to focus here a little bit. So as you come into the firewall here, here's our servo tray. And so the gear is going to end up being about 3 inches back from the firewall edge here. So this is the firewall. You can see it coming through here. So it's about 3 inches back from here to here. Okay, so lastly, we're going to need to know about how high our servo is. And if we mount it on the floor, this is kind of a drawing, a simulated drawing of the mount box and firewall. Okay, so if we mount this servo back here, you can see that our connector is going to be about 7/8 of an inch up from the floor on the servo. That's with the the rubber washers installed and everything, and accounting for the ball link being on top of that servo arm is going to be about 7/8 of an inch. So now that we have all our measurements, I went ahead and drew a mock-up here. You can see that our throttle arm is at 5/8 inch at the origin point, and then we have a 7/8 inch height where the servo is going to mount in the tray. This is 3 inches back from the firewall as we measured, and this is 3.5 inches from the firewall. So drawing that intersecting line here tells us that it's about 3/4 inch up from the firewall.
It features a 40-inch wingspan and an airfoiled wing for superior outdoor performance in light to moderate winds. The electronics package is plenty of power.